So now for the comedy portion of our show. I don't know if that's me. That's me, not my wife. So this is my wife Traci coming up. We are going to do a little presentation on our garden.
Well, my name is Traci, and I've been gardening pretty much my whole entire life. I started off with my parents, of course, and they did the traditional kind of gardening where we put a lot of chemicals on our garden. And then as I grew up, I went and did my own garden, and it was small, tiny. Then I met this guy, and we bought our house. And we started gardening together, and when he worked for the conservation district, he said, hey, why aren't we doing what I do at work? We should be doing something different.
So that's our girls, that's Lily and that's Willow. That was a few years ago. But so when it was 2017, we purchased our place in Frankfurt. And this was the garden we started out with. When we bought the place, they had a garden there, and they till today. For how long, we don't know. So we was like, well, she was excited that we got room for the garden and stuff like that. So the first year, we
didn't even own the house yet.
Yeah.
We planted. They allowed us to plant.
So when we purchased the house, we got the tiller with the house. Yay! Proud to say that tiller is no longer at our house. You see my excited look for tilling the garden. So yeah, that was our first year. We just kept up with the soil destruction, and 2017 was dry. We tried. Next time.
I can tell you, our soil was like powder. It was pathetic. It was powdery, and then when it did rain, it was so compact.
Zero soil structure, no infiltration whatsoever. The water just pooled up on there, and that's even our practices are kind of how we planted back then. Is we got one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. It's just.
And we'd walk on top of the soil, and it was just little poofs, poofs, poofs. And then when it rained, it stayed on top of that soil.
We try to water on these plants. You can just see it just pool up right there. It's sit there forever. No infiltration. You couldn't get nothing down to the plants. This is earlier or later in the summer. Just not much out there. Trying to get some water to a few things that are a little bit alive.
And what we failed to mention is that we have no water supply. We rely on rain barrels. And we have many.
This is out in our backyard, so we have no hydrants back there.
Thankfully, the previous owners did leave us some rain barrels, and we've been purchasing some. We have a lot of gutters, and that is our main source of water.
More of the same in 2017.
Our manual weed control.
Yeah, there's our weed control back there. Grilling foods.
Yes, they love helping us.
Luckily, it was dry enough to really didn't even have any weeds growing. So that's how bad the soils was and everything. And that was our tomato plants that we ended up with that year.
And that's with fertilizer, because at that time we were using Miracle-Gro and everything that we could think of to try to make our garden grow. And if you can see, is cracking. Yeah. It's really very icky.
That was pretty much our harvest for that year.
Yeah, we got a few salads, maybe a salsa. So
in 2018, she's My joke is, God created man, and they created, whoa, man, you need to slow down a little bit. We don't need to turn the whole yard in the garden 1 year, but we keep expanding, so she wanted it bigger, so I wanted a bigger tiller, tractor tiller, and filled up the area there, and then we're putting a fence around it too, so.
I don't sleep. All I do is dream about what's next. And he loves it. He loves it. These posts and everything, we went down to the river to one of his buddies and we cut everything down. Thankfully, his buddy helped us.
Yeah, the cedar, that green glacier you talked about, there's some cedars. That's what we went down and got a bunch of them and cut them up. And
then we took turns digging holes and that was fun.
Yeah.
And this is our front fence, and again, our kiddos and our Oliver dog. And you can see he's excited.
So, well, we talked about it. It's like, why are promote no-till, promote soil health work. Why are we tilling up our garden? Let's put fabric down and not till anymore. So we put fabric around the outside, and then we decided, well, we don't want to put it, through the middle. We're going to do something else. So we left fabric around the outside and planted garden. That's 2018.
I think it's because we started getting sunburnt with the black and just.
It was still right.
What's that?
His legs were still right.
I think his legs always look like that. Little chicken legs.
Thanks for noticing. So around the outside here, we start planting perennials around that. Well, on the outside, put perennials, and she got some potted ones here. And then we put I threw seed out all the way around, to get perennials started on the outside of the garden to help everything out.
This is important because this was the year we were getting married, and we got married in our backyard.
Yeah, so everything had to look pretty, and it was very dry that year too, so. That thing got a lot of use.
So
Trying to keep things green for the wedding.
as I was telling you, we do not have any water in the back. So Dennis made this contraption where he sucked out the water from the rain barrels into this yellow, what is it?
It's just a tank, it's a water tank.
Yeah.
Got a motor on a little pond motor on the front. It was an old sprayer, and I turned it into a little water truck, I guess.
We planted a lot of trees that year too, because we had a lot of ash trees, and thankfully we got most of them cut down.
You got a question?
Yeah.
You mentioned your rain barrels several times. Do they grow in summer, or what are they?
They're just 55-gallon barrels, and underneath we got 6 55-gallon barrels and one big water tank off of one shed. And so, yeah, we just keep dipping out of there, and when it rains, they fill back up.
How do you keep from growing out?
We're constantly watering.
Yeah, I mean, they don't stay in, water doesn't stay in there long enough. Don't have enough to really, that be a problem. The big tank, it does, that does get algae on it, and the dog goes and jumps in there, and it's great. It smells really terrible. But yeah, we did, the only thing we put in there is stuff to keep the mosquitoes down.
And I just did that this last year, but most of the time we're dipping so many times in there that it breaks the surface, and it just seems like we don't really have a lot of issues.
The dry years, we run out, like 2018, we just run out of water. Even with our rain barrels, we run out. So we were trying to water quite a bit in the garden back then. Now we don't as much. So we don't, I know 2018 is, like say the wedding and everything, we didn't have a lot of pictures of that growing season of garden itself for some reason. I don't know how that happened with her. Because I'm surprised you all got that picture taken at least 20 times a day, I guarantee you. But it's so in the end of 2018, we planted cover crops in there and then let it go. And I don't know why, but somehow I thought it was going to be good idea to mow down the cover crops. I don't know why I did that, but I did that. And then there's some pumpkins out there, and I think we got some manure we threw out there too.
Somebody was asking what we planted for cover crops.
It was basically, it was rye and it had some clovers and radishes and stuff in it, but it was late enough that we didn't get a lot of growth on it, just a little bit. So you'll see the next slide, I believe.
And we did use cow manure this year, and it was fall when we put it down.
Yeah.
That does have, it could burn, but when we did it in the fall and it sat that whole time, we didn't have a problem at all. We do now use rabbit manure, and it's great. It's wonderful.
So this is early spring of 2019. See some of the cover crops start, there, the rye, I carried over a little bit. And we did actually had a pretty decent mat cover there, so that was a good thing. So this was a really first year of no-tilling and kind of a big transition year, I guess. Then this is just, I think that same day, Willow got a bag of coffee grounds there. She spread it around.
So I do a lot of research, and those books that are on the left are some of the books that I read. And you are able to get coffee grounds from coffee shops. They give them out in huge bags, and they were free. So we did that. I've done eggshells. I've tried all kinds of things. And I can tell you some things work, some things don't. I do a lot of trial and error, and I have journals over there where I've written things down, and I've made a lot of mistakes and learned. But then we found things that have worked, and we just keep going.
So there's our garden planted for 2019. And that year we mulched with alfalfa. Grass hay.
Yep.
Grass hay that year. There's some old grass hay bales we used to put out there. Worked great.
The weed suppression was amazing. For when it rained, it helped keep the moisture in. We didn't have to water as much that first year at all.
Yeah, well, 2019 we had plenty of moisture,
Yeah,
right?
we
So
did.
we didn't
It
water
was
any.
great. But even just the soil itself, like you've seen in other pictures on the larger, your farms, you can see when we had our temperature gauge out on the grass or just anywhere versus when we pulled back the hay, it could be about 10 degrees or more difference.
Yeah, during the middle of the day, it could be even more than that. So there's a pollinator starting to come in that year. They're really coming in good all the way around there. And next slide shows it later in the year. And this is what it looks like around our garden every year now. It's the thing that is concerning to me, last year, it looked like this. Flowers great everywhere, 0 bees. We had no bees flying around our yard. We got all these pollinators here, back behind here. We actually got 1,000 square foot of pollinators now with fruit trees flowering everywhere. And we had 0 bees last year. That's, yeah.
I have a nice extended regular rules.
You want to see us? We don't want to see. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that, whatever that's worth, we use no chemicals around our yard anymore or anything, so it's just kind of concerning that we're not seeing any bees, but this was in 2019, and the pollinators really come in really good.
So where do you, what's your answer to where the bees are?
Dead. Chemicals. That's what I'm gonna say. If someone can tell me the difference, I'd like to know. Anthony, yeah. We don't have any in, I don't even know where our nearest ones would be. We always had them before, like probably even this year, the girls wouldn't even like to go out there because there's so many bees around. But, man, it just really last year, I didn't really notice her right away. She's the one that knows. She goes, how come we don't have any bees around? And it's not just honeybees, bumblebees, the little native bees. There just was hardly any around.
It might have to do with being the drier conditions, maybe, I don't know.
Well, it was wet, in spring, and then this is 19, yeah. But, and then we had bees then, but I was just talking last year's where we really noticed that we didn't have any bees last year.
Later in the season, I did have a few, but
Right.
it wasn't like he's saying, it wasn't like what we've seen in the past.
Did you notice if you had more birds and stuff or not?
Oh, we got birds everywhere, yeah. Birds and rabbits, yeah, not more than usual. I mean, I got a big white mulberry tree by my shed, and I love mulberries, and I don't ever get any.
I've never had one. Never a ripe one.
So we started our potato patch in 2019 too.
What's that? Roof stout method. Is this where, who taught us this?
I just,
From a friend, I found it.
I read about it or whatever, seen where people have done this. So what we did is we
This was fun.
she went and cut up our potatoes, got potato seeds or potatoes for planting, and she cut them up and.
Let
we
them
just went
scab
out-
over for a couple of days.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
Then, just laid them out in rows and we covered them up. Forgot about it. Walked away basically.
What you covered up with?
That was used grass hay that year. That's what I had available that year, so that's what I used that year.
And then as they grew, we just threw more on top. And that was it. We never watered them. We didn't do anything with them. So we didn't really have great expectations for them at all. And then when we felt like having potatoes in July?
Yeah, we just.
Oh, I don't have a picture.
Yeah,
It's further down, but all you had to do is just push some of the hay back and it just grabs them and they're pretty darn clean.
Yeah. So this is middle, I don't know, I guess I don't know if I got a deal.
No.
No, but, so yeah, everything's looking good. We had corn that year, sweet corn, and I don't do that anymore in that year. It turned out fine, but that was the third time I planted it. First time I was a typical farmer, when I got there early and good, and nothing came up. So.
When the gophers.
I planted again, and it come up, and then the gophers got it. Then I planted again, and we finally got something. We did the Three Sisters, and that's something, usually that one looks like very well. But that's just another picture garden that year, everything just looking really, really good. There's the Three Sisters, we got the corn with the beans planted right by the corn. They're climbing right at the corn stalks, and then the melons squash were planted down the bottom and took off from there. It's a good concept. I mean, it's great.
But I do it again? No.
We got, everybody's got sweet corn you can get, so we don't want to screw around with sweet corn. And it is a little bit of a jungle to get at some of the stuff, but it works good.
For green beans, I'd rather do succession planting with the, not the vine, just the regular bush beans. It just is easier. I get higher yields. And then if I do the succession, planting every week or every 2 weeks, then I get more and more.
So here's where we can see the potatoes. Just take and move it back, and there they are. Go move it back, and if you want 3 or 4 potatoes to eat that night, just go pick them and cover it back up, and no big deal. It was pretty fun, actually. So there is when we harvested it, because in August. End of August. We probably could have let them go a little longer, but.
You want to usually make sure that the potatoes are dead. The plant on top is dead before you start. And this is, again, something that we didn't know at the beginning. And as we do more and more, we are learning.
So we didn't dig anything there. We just moved the hay back, and picked up the potatoes.
Actually, we were all sitting there and we watched, looking at Dennis, and he just picks up the snake that crawled on his lap and tossed it like it was nothing. And I'm,
But yeah, there's
198 pounds. And that's what we counted there. That's not including the stuff that we ate during July and August. So I don't know. I mean, we had well over 250 pounds.
the purple potatoes, they're really good.
Those were amazing. And when you make mashed potatoes, they turn out pink.
They don't taste any different.
No.
It's kind of a novelty thing, I guess.
No,
I
they're
think
healthier.
They're healthier, yeah.
They are.
They do grow well.
And there is a kind of a process for those. I mean, you have to let them dry and
Yeah, so after we take the potatoes out, we put them in racks in our barn and let them in the dark, keep it dark and let them sit there for about 3 weeks, and then you can put them in crates or whatever and store them down in our.
storm shelter that we have, and it's got to be kind of humid and warm.
Yeah, there's cabbages and stuff.
We learned how to make sauerkraut that year.
Yeah, it was really good too. It was just great. You know, as our first year with no-till, we very, very happy.
Yeah,
With production and everything.
and it's just amazing just that first year how, remember those tomato plants, they were maybe 2 feet tall, and incredible our everything just produced stuff.
Moisture helps, no doubt, but we could infiltrate the moisture, we could keep the moisture there. Made world of difference. So we decided in spring of 2020, she's again, I need more room. So let's cut that fabric back, because we never put nothing in that fabric that we put around the outside. We were gonna put holes in there and plant stuff in there, we didn't do that. She says, let's get rid of that. So we cut it back in half. And I'll tell you this right here, it is like this concrete floor. That's kind of what I was thinking, and why we didn't do the whole thing. And when people ask me, I said, well, I want fabric to put in my garden, I said, don't do it. Absolutely do not do it. We didn't even plant nothing there. I planted a cover crop there and let it go the whole year just to get that ground loosened up and get some soil structure to it. That was a huge eye opener right there.
Even when there was you can see that line. And on this side of the line where we have been, well, on this side, we dug down. So when we dug down here, there was nothing. It was just dead. It was so compact. And like he was saying, it was cement. When we dug virtually on this line, there was so many earthworms there, and then soil, and there was aeration. It was just amazing. And it was right down that line. Then I have more good ideas. And this is when we started building arches. I love the arches. Cattle panels, I love cattle panels, and if I can ever find cattle panels, I will take them. Because they just work out so nifty for so many things. And this is where I grow my spaghetti squash, my high pumpkins, I do still grow some green beans, vine green beans. I grow those. And then I started doing like companion planting with the flowers, nasturtiums and vining flowers, just to, because you do draw different pests for pest control, and it just helps with that. So those are some of the things that we started doing in our garden, and I love it. And we start everything from seed, everything. Our herbs, our tomatoes, jalapenos.
We would have bought our seeds in, but I wasn't gonna hook up a trailer, bring them in. She has an addiction. My garden seeds.
Yes, I do. But when you start planting, you have them in these little tiny trays. And then by the time you're done, you have 500-600 different plants. And you have to have room for all these plants. So this is just my tiny, and we don't have a greenhouse.
Well, this is the old method.
Yeah.
It has expanded now. We got, when Shopko went out of business, the 3-tier shelving units. Well, that's what goes here now. So we got 3 rows of plants in a house. It's a jungle.
And this year it's gonna wrap around that side too. And this was our first year-ish. And these are different ways that we tried. When you do seed start, one of my things that I would highly recommend is using a fan, because otherwise, you find that dampening off happens. If you have like an oscillating fan, that helps with mold control, fungus control. Watering from the bottom really helps with that as well. So that's one of the things that I found is very helpful. These are Sterilite containers that we use when the plants get a little bit bigger, and we have about 10 of those, and those are really long and wide, and it makes it a lot easier for when we're herding off to be able to carry the plants in and out, because when you take your plants out, you want to make sure that you give them so much sunlight until they finally kind of acclimate to being outside and ready to be taken to your garden to be planted. Otherwise, they get sunburned.
They have to get potted one more time, going from these to another pot, because he likes to start stuff way too early too.
One year it was really bad.
So this is 2021. Our soils that we started with, that we couldn't get to infiltrate water, it had no life, no worms and nothing in it. 2021. This is what we're looking like then. We got earthworms all over the place. You see still some platiness here, but it actually changed real fast. It really took on structure really fast for us. This is just kind of, a garden.
Yep. This is when we started doing the companion planting, and that has really helped. We also crop rotate.
You can see one of the arches back here. And at that time, she was using bamboo for the tomato plants and some of these cages, and got somewhere. But that's evolved since then too. Is arch with the vine caps growing up over top of the arch.
So last year I grew loofahs, and that was fun.
So this is plant garlic. Usually in September, I think, is when we plant garlic. And she really likes garlic, so we normally plant 300 to 400 garlic plants a year. No vampires, never seen one.
I freeze it, it's a lot easier.
So yeah, there we go. We planted 370 bulbs along there. And this is this spring, kind of what we're at now. Got arch there, got the cattle panels back here. This is where all the tomatoes and peppers go on right on the cattle panels, ties them up to it. And then the same stuff.
That really works really well for us. I just weave the tomatoes inside the cattle panels and I tie them up, and it's perfect.
And root mulch, we tried various. We started with grass hay first year. The second year we did alfalfa. I didn't like the alfalfa. I'm sure it's probably a little better for nutrients it puts back in there, but it's a lot coarser. Not as easy to work with. Last 2 years we used straw, and that's the easiest stuff to work with. It breaks down faster. I had to add a little more to it, but it's easier to work with.
You can see here on the bottom, until we can get to our cattle panels, because we put our cattle panels about 1.5 feet up. I use bamboo and tie the plants to the bamboo until we can reach that.
The little, right there, the little bamboo shoots.
No, I don't have enough cattle panels yet, so that was kind of our solution. The cattle panels are more to our east there. Then you can kind of see our tomatoes growing on the cattle panels there.
Gold at the end of the rainbow. It's, we get a lot of different varieties of tomatoes, and it's amazing the height difference in them. But, if you want to know about different varieties of tomatoes, we tried a bunch of them.
We have about 50 or so different types of tomatoes that we grow, and about 30, 40 different varieties, and then about 20 different peppers that we grow. But we try to grow enough for a whole year. So we can, and we dehydrate and we freeze, and I don't have a freeze dryer. I'd love to have one, but
I call it my second full-time job.
he does help. It's amazing. I have a wonderful husband. Yeah. Hey, I go hunting with him, so.
So there's just our garden gate, arches. We don't weed our garden. We don't have to weed our garden. Once in a while, you got something coming through, you go pick it out. But
and we don't water as much as we used to at all.
We did this year. I didn't buy enough hose to run back there and water. I turned it on for an hour in the morning, and then I move it next day to another spot, turn on for an hour. Just when it got so dry this summer, everything was looking so good. I'm like, I don't want this stuff to fizzle out, so I did give it a little bit. But we typically our garden when we start the plants, we go and water the new plants till they kind of get going, and then.
And that's all by hand.
Yeah.
Carrying water buckets. And we don't use fertilizer. I use blood meal. We were talking about that earlier, the blood meal, fish emulsion. And when I have pests, I neem oil, pick them off by hand.
So this is pretty typical of when we go out in the garden. If we get that probably 3 times a week or so, come back with 2 big.
Let me tell you, it's fun canning all that.
Yeah. So I'd say really bunch of different varieties of tomatoes. The black ones, black beauties, I love them. Eating tomatoes, that's the best. I love them things. These little atomic grape things, we had about 8 of those. If you got a half of one, that's too many. So just keep that in mind. If you ever plant those things, you could have fed 3 armies with different things.
Mm-hmm.
Jalapenos, we love jalapenos, but
Oh, yes.
this is our soils now. This is last year. The fungi in there and everything, that was, I was probably a little too excited when I dug that up and seen that. I gave it like a little school kid.
Yeah, the mycelium, it's amazing. We have fungus growing in our garden, and even in the new beds that we put up front, we made some new raised beds. I have gardens everywhere. This isn't just the only garden we have at our house. We have them everywhere. And I'm trying, last year was our first year of permaculture garden in our back. So we have all kinds of projects going on, but this was fun to see. I was glad to see that. And it's amazing how this works together, and this is the telephone system. And Dennis can tell you a little bit about that.
Go to the next
Telephone system.
So there's all the worms in our soils now. Shane was out there this last summer. We went in the garden and took a shovel out there and dug it up. And at that time, he said it was the most worms he'd seen in shovel full that year. Or it was we got a lot of biology in there, a lot of worms in there. Looking real good.
So that's it.
She got the picture.
I don't like being in pictures. I like taking pictures, and he's right. I take very many.
You guys got any questions?
Can you call that residue?
Yes.
Over there.
Yep. Yeah, I'd like to find a cover crop, but we have too much residue. We can't get a cover crop, get a cover crop to grow, so I don't do that. But I think it's a pretty good trade-off. We're still putting a lot of biology back in the soil from all that breaking down. So, yeah, it's over the winter, it breaks down a lot. You know, we're still working on it. They're still working on it. Bugs are still working on stuff.
So, like all your vines and all your tomatoes and everything, you leave that.
Nope, I left it. I did in the spring, early spring. I will take them out. I know that there are things that can happen, but yes, I will take them out.
We haven't had any disease issues at all, so we're pretty lucky that way, I guess. We don't worry about it too much because we haven't had any problems. Even our potato patch, we haven't changed that. It's been in the same spot, and we don't have any potato bugs or anything. So.
One of the things is, when you water from up above, it splashes, and that's when you get that fungus or everything happening. So when we have the mulch, we're not getting a lot of that splash up. So that stuff is applying onto your tomatoes and everything, causing those issues. So that is really cut down on that. And we haven't had a loss of crop yet, and this will be our fifth now.
The only thing we really have problems with is the cabbage moths or the little green worms. That gives us the biggest one, pretty much.
And I can tell you, like I said, I make a lot of mistakes. So before I even knew what tomato hornworm was, I was a real idiot. There was one laying in our driveway. It's like, ooh, that's a little caterpillar. I took that sucker and put it in my garden. Yeah, idiot. But I remember we had that pollinator garden all the way around, and the umbels and everything. And tell you what, the next day, there was 2 days later, there was all these little white things all over it. Had no idea what it was. And then I looked it up, and it was a wasp had laid its eggs in there. Thank you. I'm so thankful for that because, oh my gosh, what a mistake I had made and what a lesson I learned. So yeah, I've made plenty of mistakes, and I've learned quite a bit.
Our pollinators and everything you leave there till the next spring, till it starts to warm up, and then we'll take it off and throw it in the compost. And we do try to compost. It's a pretty pitiful attempt that we do because I start out good in the spring, and then I get busy and forget about it and never go turn it. And then 2 weeks later, boy, I should go turn it.
And we do. We both have full-time jobs and, kids that, our kids go for the summer.
So you can see back here, that's all pollinators back there and fruit trees and everything. We turn that into all pollinators back to and then plant more fruits and stuff back in there.
We have about 2 acres. And we tried, when we first moved in, it was kind of monoculture. I mean, it was all just one type of tree, one type of everything. And so we've taken a lot of those trees out, which was really hard to do because you don't want to ever take trees out. But when it was the ash tree and we knew the ash borer was coming, we wanted to have a head start and be able to get some trees growing. So that's what we ended up doing. But we ended up using a lot of that.
Mulch tree, ground up the tree limbs and made mulch out of it and use that all over the place.
I have an asparagus patch that's kind of east to our garden, and it's about 40 by 30. And previous owners did have an established patch, and we just keep adding to it more and more. And that's where a lot of that went to too. But again, we did the no-till over there, and all I did was just, well, the girls and I laid down fabric and tilled the grass and went from there.
And
Well, how big is your potato patch?
I believe it's 20 by 30.
And growing.
He wanted to know how big our potato patch was, and I think it's like 20 by 30. We make, like everything else, we wanted to make it a little bigger each time, so. It wasn't as big then. It was like 18 by 20 or something like that. It was nothing.
We did nothing. We did not fertilize to get when we first started, I know you can't hear, it was 18 by 20 when we got the 200 pounds of potatoes. And we didn't fertilize, we didn't touch it. We just let it go. We did add more of the.
Just add more mulch to it, we just let it go, and we plant some garlic in there along the edges of it, but we should probably plant some, some beans or something there too.
That is my idea.
The potatoes this year were smaller, but that doesn't get watered at all, so I attribute that to that. Had plenty of them, but the only problem we really had with the potatoes, one year the bulls got in there, and they took a bite out of 3/4 of our potatoes. They were in our garden, in the potato garden, and I went out there and set a trap line out, and I got rid of them. Got like 15 of them out of there, and never had a problem after that. Got rid of them.
When you guys started your potato patch, did you kill grass first?
Nope.
So she wants to know when we started our potato patch, if we killed the ground first. We had something stacked there when we bought the
Some
place.
bricks, but then.
Yeah, so there was a bare spot there.
But he
we
mowed
made
it
bigger.
down.
Yeah, we just mowed it down and just put them down.
We just took the potato and screwed it in,
That was,
and then just laid everything on top, and that was all we did. And we just hoped for the best, and just kind of, hey, yeah, okay, good luck.
had a little bit of grass come through, but really not much at all.
You have trouble with the grass seed, adding up.
Not really. The alfalfa actually was a bigger problem than anything. That's what I said. I'm sure there's more nutrients in the alfalfa, but it's a lot harder to work with.
I know, like he was saying, we have,
Don't rotate your potato.
No, we don't. We haven't yet. And asked if we rotate our potatoes, and we haven't yet, but like I said, we haven't had any issues. So we've talked about it, like, we know we should, but we haven't had any issues, so we just keep, because we got the other garden fenced off for the deer and the rabbits. That's why we just leave potatoes out there. Because if we put beans, out there, and of course he wants to make that bigger and build a fence around that too, but we haven't got there yet.
plus that means I have to move and make another garden area. So he's been holding off because he's not having a good time mowing around the gardens that I have currently.
She keeps adding stuff. I said, there's less to mow. I said, no, it's more to mow around.
It is, it makes it a little bit longer for him to mow, but I know this year we're going to try vermicomposting. And so Dennis and the South Dakota Soil Health Coalition, they have a bus tour every summer, and I get to go to those. And every summer, even though I am not a farmer, I learn something every single time. And the farmers, you guys, this is more geared towards you. I learned something to use in my own garden, and vermicomposting was something that I learned in the Minokan farms. And they were able to, when you're there, they show you the different fields and how they applied it to their fields. And by the time we went, it was their third or fourth year, and they had numbers, and they could tell you the yield and show you the different, year 1, year 2, year 3. I think they were in year 4 when we went and visited. And to see the difference was amazing. And they started off with backup. It was like, hey, Dennis, we have backup. So he's real excited, and that'll be our next project.
Yes, I was gonna do it this year. I was gonna build the Johnson Sioux reactor and do that, but I didn't get it done. So maybe this year.
It'll be this year. But again, like I said, we're doing more permaculture and everything in our backyard. That's back there, trying to incorporate that. And then we have the fruit, the elderberries and everything going on, and plums, and we have a lot. We're juggling a lot, so.
You guys end up with any bug on your boards, pumpkins or?
Yes, and that is one thing that I do rotate. And yes, so what I've heard, and I have not tried yet, that's one of those things that I was researching in the wintertime, is that they've said that if you grow dill and you cut that up and chop it off and put it on top of your, the vines, that might be able to help.
The vine board. Yeah, we've had some issues with that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try that this year. If you have any suggestions.
This year we didn't have as much problem. Didn't have much problem this year.
I grow a lot of spaghetti squash because my kids love spaghetti squash. They'd rather have that than pasta, which is great because we have a lot of spaghetti sauce.
Any other questions? I think, we'll still be around, stick around here. She'll be over here by her books if you want to go ask some more stuff about your questions, but I think we'll shut her down and let people that want to get rolling, but I appreciate everybody coming out in this weather to join us, and it was a great thing. I don't want to get in trouble.